And our conversation with Sarah Jannsen from the World Almanac and Book of Facts, brought to you by Marcus and Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Let's say hello. Hi, Sarah.
Here.
I haven't talked to you for a whole year. How about that?
It has been a whole year. It's a nice way to mark the end of the past year and starting the next one.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things when I have a conversation with you is, when I ask you what's new, you always have something. Because, Sarah, there's lots new about this year's Book of Facts.
There's a ton new in this year's World Almanac, whether it's, new statistics on top podcasts and YouTubers, or what's going on with the election in 2020, obviously something that we're paying a lot of attention to. Lots of interesting information in this year's book.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the interesting things about this year's book in particular is that because we're leaving the teens and entering the 20s, it means you've got a decade in review section this year.
We do. The World Almanac editors really had a ton of fun putting this feature together because in so many ways, the news flies by so quickly, and it's easy to sort of think that something that happened, 10 years ago actually might seem like it happened 2 years ago or last year.
Yeah.
Some of these fun stories and some of the more serious stories, it's hard to believe it's been so long since we were all talking about, LeBron James going on ESPN and announcing he's going to leave the Cavaliers to go sign with the Miami Heat.
He's going to take his
Huge
talents.
Story in 2010.
Yeah, he's going to take his talents elsewhere, so he was. But my goodness, to some that might seem like it was only last year. To others, that might seem like ancient history. Really? That was only 10 years ago?
Exactly, 10 years and 3 teams, I believe, and a couple of different trades. So, yeah, it's definitely been an interesting process to look at that whole decade from that perspective. And really, some of these stories do have that sense of, I can't believe it was that long ago, or conversely, I can't believe it's only been that long.
Yeah, one of the interesting things about the decade in review, too, is we get an idea of what technology was back then and how cutting edge it was, and how we would look at that same technology today and say, dinosaurs.
It's true. It moves so quickly. But believe it or not, we didn't even have iPads as the decade first opened. So that's something that we've really only had for 10 years, and yet those kinds of tablets are so pervasive in a lot of people's lives now.
Yeah, they really are. They're a big key to what we do here on Indiana in the Morning, as a matter of fact. Sarah, one of the other things that we always enjoy about the World Almanac and the Book of Facts, and you mentioned them, the editor and the editor's picks. Every year they find something that really is, I don't know, quirky might not be the word, but it really piques your interest.
Yeah, the editor's picks are always sort of fun to put together because we're taking a look at the year in news in a sort of more, less serious way. So we're looking at the year's news stories and trying to find, little items that encapsulate the events of the year in our time capsule. And, some of the things this year included the Mars Opportunity rover, which passed away on the surface of Mars after exceeding its lifespan by 14 years, which was pretty impressive for NASA. We also have Megan Rapinoe, breakout World Cup soccer star Megan Rapinoe's purple-pink hair dye, which was, created a pretty memorable look for a lot of little girls to look up to as they were watching the World Cup this summer. So we have a lot of fun stuff in there and a lot of more serious stuff in there this year.
Yeah, really. When you think about the World Almanac as well, you think about some pretty serious scholarship, and a lot goes into compiling all of the data. But for students, it's invaluable. It's a resource right at their fingertips. What are some of the new sections that we're talking about when we look at some of those things?
So we have some great new sections this year that sort of make some of the classic World Almanac facts a little bit easier to understand and access. So, for example, we have a great new section on food and agriculture that combines, the kinds of traditional statistics that you expect to get in an almanac, farm statistics in terms of like prices and that kind of thing, production, but also, things on nutrition, things on modified organisms, genetically modified products. So these are topics that people are interested in and maybe are seeking facts on in a source that is less polarized and less opinionated on one side or the other.
Yeah, one of the things that I really like about it as well is you come to things, for instance, weather and climate disasters by the type, notable aircraft disasters over a certain period of time. And I'm just looking at one particular page, but on and on they go. And people, you tend to lose track of things like that. But then for some reason, you need to have that piece of knowledge, and the World Almanac and Book of Facts is the place to go.
Yeah, really any topic that you might have a question about, we're trying to provide one resource for you to look and get your bearings and get a sense of where you might go further for research even. So, for example, that fantastic climate disasters information, you can see going back for decades, those kinds of numbers, and maybe look at, information that you could reinterpret or look further into researching using our source information, which is provided with every single statistical table we publish. So it's definitely a great resource for anyone who's curious about tons of different topics.
We're talking with Sarah Jannsen about the World Almanac and Book of Facts 2020 edition. Sarah, how many people work on this? What kind of a team do you have?
So the World Almanac every year has about 20 people who work on it, and that includes editors, fact-checkers, researchers, photo researchers, but also people who are experts in their subjects. So, for example, the astronomy chapter is edited by a doctor of astronomy. He's an expert in that arena, and we certainly rely on him to do that very specific kind of calculation that your average World Almanac editor is not qualified to do. These kinds of experts can be really helpful when you're taking a big subject and trying to digest it and provide great information for the average reader.
Yeah, and the gathering of information, that has to go on a daily basis all year long. I'm picturing a lot of really cluttered desks and bulletin boards.
You've been spying on us, I think. We do have some messy desks here sometimes, particularly as we're getting down to the wire and about to essentially press the print button on, a 1,000-page reference book. But it's definitely an interesting process, and it allows us to, collate all of this different information, all of these great resources that are available both online and off, and make it available all in one place for readers.
Yeah, I would guess that you wait as long as you possibly can because information is constantly being updated before you actually do press that print button too, right?
Yes, it's always a bit of a challenge. The news never stops, and so there's always, the day after we print those final pages, there's always a little bit of, remorse, but you always know that you can work on it the next year and try to reflect the events that are constantly changing in the upcoming edition. So that's always an interesting challenge as well.
It is the World Almanac and Book of Facts 2020 edition. Sarah Jannsen has been with us this morning. Sarah, how do people get their hands on this?
So the World Almanac 2020 should be available wherever books are sold as of today. You can also go to our website, worldalmanac.com, and find ordering information there.
Yeah, and speaking of that, you go to your website, that information that you find there, that's a daily type of thing too, isn't it?
We do have daily changing facts on our website, absolutely. We've got, today in history, celebrity birthdays, that kind of thing. We also have some great stuff on our social media platforms. So you can check us out on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, and we have new stuff every day there, as well as I think some giveaways will be upcoming. So definitely check us out there too.
Absolutely. All right. It's the World Almanac and Book of Facts 2020. Sarah Jannsen has been with us. Sarah, I guess we'll catch up with you next year about this time.
I will definitely look forward to that. Thank you so much.
Have a great day.
You too.
I know. There's Sarah Jannsen from the World Almanac and Book of Facts. The 2020 edition is out now, and our conversation with Sarah brought to you by Marcus & Mack, a law firm representing injured people.